Geil. Abgelehnt, soll man drücken. Wir lehnen alle ab mal rein. So.
Un poco. Perfect. Let's begin. Okay, many thanks for attending this webinar. We are going to record it, and after we will send to you. In this webinar, we aim to explain the last regulations, one that is already approved and the other that is still a draft, but that we expect that it will be approved in a short place. And after our explanations, we expect that you make us questions. We try to solve your doubts, and if not, we will take note and come to you with an answer. Just in the end, raise your virtual hand or write something in the chat, and we will try to go through the questions. I explain a little bit the structure of the webinar. We will begin with the regulatory framework of the two different regulations. We will explain the content of the draft of electronic invoicing. After, we will explain the already approved regulation on software requirements that is well known Verifactu. And as I said, we go through in the end for questions and doubts that you can have in our explanations. Okay, so let's begin. We wanted to begin with what is electronic invoicing. Okay, electronic invoicing is the same as a traditional invoice, as you know, as is regulated in the Royal Decree 1619 2012, but with the same legal effects, but in a digital format. And the electronic invoicing guarantees the authenticity and integrity of the content. And another point is that can be issued and received in electronic format. There are two different types of electronic invoices. The unstructured electronic invoice, that is what we know until today. So the PDF format that everyone is using. This is a format that is already electronic, but is difficult for computers, for software to read and to process. And it's not necessary that it's signed electronically. But here we have to take attention that if you receive an invoice in paper and you scan it, this is not electronic invoice. So it must be a PDF received as original and agree with your supplier that this is the original. And now the structured invoice. The structured invoice is an invoice with encrypted format. It's easy for software and computer to understand and to manage for the language that is using. And the most popular examples are in Spain, Facturae, because it's already used in the public sector, and the UBL format that is used in other European countries. Okay, now I would like to explain a little bit the regulatory framework. It is different for electronic invoicing, for software requirements, and there is also a European legislation that I will appoint some things just for you to get informed on that. In the Spanish legislation, the e-invoice, the first time that there was spoken about electronic invoice, it was on 27 with the law 56. And the Royal Decree 1619/2012, where the invoice requirements were described and the electronic invoice were described. It was the first definition of electronic invoice. Then in 2013, with the law 25/2013, it was regulate that all the transactions in the public sector. And it was meant to use electronic invoicing for each supplier or for each client that works with the public administration. And the language that it is still already mandatory is the language facturae. And then in 2022, the Ministry of Economic Affairs has put in place the law 18/2022, that is known in Spain as Ley Crea y Crece. And in this law, what they pretend different aims, but the most important is facilitate the creation and incorporation of companies, reducing the social capital to €1. Then the fight and reducing the bad debt. This is important, and you will see in the draft of the legislation why it's so important. And the global use of electronic invoicing. And linked to this aim, global use of electronic invoicing, in June 2023, they have published a draft of Royal Decree. And in this draft of Royal Decree, they explain the requirements that it will have the electronic invoicing. This draft was put in public audience until July 2023. And after, we expect that it was approved in a short term, but it has not happened. So we know that in February 2024, they have correct this first draft with all the requirements that everyone in public audience has put in place, and they have issued a new draft, and they have put in public audience to the European Union. And there is a term until 6th of May for all the countries in European Union to review this draft. And then after, it's supposed to be approved and to be published, and that the Ministry of Economics will publish in the BOE, BOE, where and after this moment, the periods to put in place this legislation will begin. And Maria will explain after which are these periods. We have put here, but we will explain. Okay, very fact. Is a different law. The aim of this law is to fight and prevent the tax fraud. And the first law and the first measures were put in place in 2021. And then now this December, they have published a royal decree, the 1007/2023, that is the regulation known very facto, that regulates the requirements for invoicing systems and programs. Yeah, and here it's important to say that in the law of 2021, there was a a new article, the 29.2, that has redefined how the software must be, and it's not only affecting invoicing software, but also accounting software. That is something that we have to have in mind, that everything that they require for invoicing, they require also for accounting. Okay, I said that what we are waiting for is that a ministerial order have to be published, and this ministerial order will contain all the technical requirements for producers and traders of these softwares. And after 9 months of this publication, the producers of the software have to put in place a software fulfilling all the requirements. And we will explain after which are these requirements. This royal decree, as said, was approved in December this year and will be in place, or have to be in place on 1st July 2025. Okay, and then now just a few points on the European legislation. It is called BIDA, that is VAT in the digital age. The three aims of this legislation is to fight against fraud, to win tax efficiency, and this will be done with 3 regulations. Put in place a one-stop shop for VAT, regulate the VAT on platforms. If the platforms are not declaring VAT, the clients will be liable to declare this VAT, and the electronic invoicing. And here is the point linked to the Spanish regulation. They have issued a draft regulating the electronic invoicing for intra-community transactions, so invoices between countries in the European community, and they have left free to regulate each country the electronic invoicing locally. So we expect that in 2028 we will have a European regulation and a local regulation, and that we will need to fulfill both. Okay, now Maria will present the content of the draft of Royal Decree on electronic invoicing.
So hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. As Gemma has already made an introduction to today's topics, I'm going to explain further and in more depth the upcoming e-invoicing regulation, and that's the content of the draft of this royal decree. So first of all, let's talk about the scope of application. Who will be obliged to issue electronic invoices, and who will be obliged to comply with this royal decree, with this new regulation. So first of all, the important thing is that we are talking about B2B scope. We are talking about the companies and professionals who carry out transactions with other companies and professionals. And at the same time, we are talking about the companies and professionals who are obliged to issue invoices already with the current regulation in force, which would be the Royal Decree 1619 from 2012. And also further from the B2B scope, we need the important aspect to determine the scope of this regulation is Spanish territory, that the both parties have to have either headquarters of the economic activity in Spain or a permanent establishment in Spain. Said this, there is an additional information received from the Association of the Spanish Tax Advisors that this regulation will also apply to companies and professionals who are not resident in the territory of the application of the tax, but which are subject to issue invoices according to current regulation That's Royal Decree 1619 from 2012. So maybe to summarize it and to leave it more clear, let me share some examples with you. So for example, we have a service provider, a company based in Barcelona, which provides services to a client, another company based in Madrid. In this case, this case is clearly within the scope of this regulation. But for example, we have a service provider, a company based in Barcelona, which provides services to another company based in Germany. In this case, the companies are not in Spanish territory. The client is not in Spanish territory. Therefore, it's out of the scope of this regulation. And we have, for example, a service provider, again, the company based in Barcelona, which provides services to a physical person, which is no company and neither professional in Spain. And in this case, we are again out of scope of this regulation. This regulation doesn't apply. And the last example would be a company which is not established in territory of application of the tax, but this company rents premises to a Spanish company. In this case, we are within the scope of this regulation because this company who rents premises, commercial premises, is obliged to issue invoice according to the Royal Decree 1619 from 2012. And said this, as every law, there are exemptions. So this regulation will not apply to voluntary invoices and will not apply to simplified invoices. These are, let's say, tickets, except for the qualified simplified invoices, which would be tickets from which you can deduct the VAT, which contain all the information necessary to deduct the VAT. In this case, this will apply. This will be with the scope of the regulation, the qualified simplified invoices. Okay, so explained the scope. Let's talk about the e-invoice. How is it defined in this Royal Decree? The Royal Decree defines e-invoice as an invoice issued and received in electronic format between companies and professionals. And this invoice has to comply with the current regulation on invoicing. It's the Royal Decree 1619 from 2012. And also has to comply with the technical characteristics contained in this new Royal Decree, which we are talking about now. So to clarify it a little bit, the situation is that actually the content of the invoices doesn't change. The content of the invoice doesn't change. It will still have to comply with all the regulation with the regulation on invoicing that is now in force, this Royal Decree from 2012. But the changes are more in the technical part of the invoice, let's say in the language and in the exchange system. So talking about the language, this message, this invoice will have to be prepared or formulated in one of the following languages. There are four accepted languages there are four languages which will be accepted in Spain. Two of them are international, XML and UBL, and two of them are local Spanish languages. One is Edifact and one is Facturae. Facturae is the one that is actually used now, currently in the e-invoicing with public administration. And to continue further with the technical requirements, the authenticity of the origin and the integrity of the content of the invoices will have to be guaranteed by one of the two following mechanisms, advanced electronic signature or electronic data interchange. And this content of the message, every e-invoice will have to contain a unique code with minimum content of tax ID number of the issuer, invoice number and series, and date of issue. And as Gemma already mentioned in the beginning, the purpose of the regulation is to improve the payment efficiency and the compliance with the payment regulation, payment terms regulation. And for this purpose, there are new requirements which are being introduced by this royal decree. Which are these requirements? So besides the obligation to issue and exchange electronic invoice, there will be also an obligation to inform on the status of this invoice. So there will be different types of this status. So there will be mandatory status that will have to be informed, that is acceptance or rejection of the invoice, and also the full payment of the invoice. Also, there will be additional or voluntary status to be informed. That would be partial acceptance or rejection of the invoice, partial payment of the invoice, and also assignment of the invoice for collection or payment to a third party. That's, let's say, confirming or factoring. And the status to whom the status will have to be informed. So all the statuses will have to be informed to the issuer of the invoice. So let's say to the vendor, to the provider, the one who issues the invoice. And also the payment status, the obligatory status, will have to be informed to the public solution. I will talk in the following slide about the public solution. But now it was clarified that this payment status will have to be informed to the public solution and not to the SII, what was initially thought. And talking about the purpose of this regulation, so this way, all this information on the payments will be available to the tax office, to the tax authority. And this information can be treated and used to monitor the compliance of the regulation on payment terms. The deadlines for the informing of the status, it will be 4 days from the date of the status. And also important to mention, if there is no rejection or a corrective invoice, then the invoice will be considered as accepted. So now, as we have talked already about the information, what information is to be exchanged, so the invoices and information on the status, now we'll explain a little bit how this exchange of information or how this information flow is supposed to work. So the Spanish system is designed as it will consist of different private platforms and one public platform, and these platforms will be exchanging the information. Platform is defined as a technological infrastructure which permits the exchange of the e-invoices between the supplier and the client. And it also has to, this platform, this technological infrastructure, has to comply with the requirements which are contained in this royal decree. We have put these requirements in one of the following slides, but these are very technical requirements, so we don't think it's necessary to comment further on them. And regarding the platforms, as I said, there will be private platforms, and these private platforms so there will be private platforms and a public platform, which are the most important requirements for the private platforms is that these will have to assure the free interconnection and interoperability. What does this mean? That they'll have to be able to connect, the private platforms will have to be able to connect to any other platforms. And this also means that they'll have to be able to transform the message, the e-invoice, to any of the 4 accepted languages in Spain. And the private platforms will have to be able to exchange the mandatory and also additional statuses. And as we commented, the public administration will design also a public platform. It's called public platform, public solution. This will be managed by the tax agency. This will work with factorial language. If you remember, it's one of the 4 accepted languages in Spain. It's the one that is already used in the invoicing with public administration. And the very important thing is that this public platform will work as a repository. It means that always if you work with any platform, always there will have to be a copy sent to a public platform. This public platform will have all the copies of all the e-invoices, and it will be possible to download these invoices. The supplier, client, authorized person will be able to download these invoices manually, automatically, in individual way or massive. And this public platform will exchange mandatory states. The choice between or the choice of the platform will be voluntary. And the important thing is also that the access point to the platform or the platform chosen must be communicated. If it's not communicated, then it's considered that you are using a public platform. So these are the technical requirements for the platforms. So we have included them for your reference, but we are not going to comment further on them. And the last point I wanted to comment is maybe the most important the most important point, and it's when will this royal decree come to force? So all these deadlines, the months you see, they depend or they start to count from the publication of the royal decree in the official gazette, the Bové. So the case of companies with turnover over 8 million, they'll have 12 months for implement the e-invoicing and also 12 months for the implementing of the this status exchange or information. For the companies with turnover below 8 million, they'll have 24 months to implement the e-invoicing and 36 months for implementing the information on status. And just to say it again or to remember better, the countings will start from the date of the publication of the royal decree. Last mentions is that there will be a transition period. So until all the companies and professionals are not obliged to comply, so the first 12 months, there will also PDF copy will have to be sent with the electronic invoice. And the public platform which I was commenting before, the public solution, which will be designed by the public administration. This will have to be available latest 2 months before the entry into force of the Royal Decree. That means 10 months after the publication of the Royal Decree. Okay, so thank you very much, and I leave Gemma to proceed. Just a moment.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna talk about Verifactu, or the new requirements for software invoicing, and as said, for accounting invoicing. Just to refresh, this is this part, the measures for preventing the tax fraud, and the Royal Decree 1007 approved in December this year, and waiting for the ministerial order for technical specification that we expect to be approved in a short place. Okay, so Verifactu. As said, the principal objective is anti-fraud, avoidance of dual use of the software, so no invoice A and invoice B, and tax control. Which is the scope of application? All taxpayers, producers and traders of invoicing software that are established in Spain, and also non-resident having a permanent establishment in Spain. But they are exempt the companies submitting SII, and I remember that there are companies with a turnover higher of 6 million, or companies that voluntarily submit SII, or they are in the monthly VAT regime that SII is also mandatory. SII is the immediate submission of information for VAT purposes in the tax agency. Also, companies being in Basque Country and Navarra are not submitted to this new regulation because they have ticket buy that is a similar regulation and is already in force. Okay, when this entry into force, as said, is approved in December of 2023 with effect on 1st July 2025. And it's important to say that the date of the approval of the ministerial order is also important, because after this date, the producers and traders has 9 months to have the software ready with all the requirements. And also the tax agency have this 9 months to develop a public solution that is thought for little companies and professionals to issue the invoices with these requirements. Which are those requirements? Okay, let me read. Integrity, immutability, accessibility, readability, traceability, signature, and record keeping. Okay, let's go for parts. Integrity and immutability means that the invoicing records cannot be changed, cannot be deleted, and have to be kept and maintained, and how or is thought that it can be done. Each invoice record will have a fingerprint or hash. What is a hash? Is a set of data associated with a message that guarantees that it cannot be changed. And every invoices must be signed electronically, and every invoice have to contain a QR code. So one is an invoice record that will have a hash of fingerprint, and the other is the invoice that will be signed electronically and contains the QR code. The QR code is a graphic representation of the invoice, and that contains the main requirements on the invoice, that is VAT number, invoice number, date, and amount. Okay, the royal decree, this royal decree that is already in force has changed the royal decree of 2012 in introducing the QR code that until now it was not mandatory for the invoices. Okay, which kind of invoicing records will be required? Will be required the registration, the modification record, and the cancellation record. And if there is a cancellation record or modification record, it has to contain the hash of the first invoice registered. So it will be important that it contains the hash, the date, the time of issuing, the software which has been issued, and if it's a set cancellation or modification invoice, will contain also the hash of the original invoice. Also, what it will be required in this invoicing software, the declaration of responsibility of the software producer. This declaration of responsibility must be contained in the software and can be claimed in each moment by a client or by the tax administration. And the producer is obliged to provide with this declaration of responsibility. The tax administration will put in place a model, and every time you are able to see if your certificate or declaration contains everything that is required, because you can compare with the model. And then now we go to an important point that is very factual. In this royal decree is provided that voluntarily, and this is important, all the invoice issuers, so when you are issuing an invoice, can voluntarily send the invoice records to the tax administration. It's not mandatory, but it's important to say that if you send these records to the tax administration, they take as granted that you fulfill all software requirements. So then you don't need to sign the invoices electronically, because they will certify directly that they are in the Verifactu system, so that they are right. And the records will contain the hash, and the invoices will contain the QR. But then in the QR, it will be a supplementary invoice saying that this invoice is fulfill the Verifactu system, or is sent to the tax administration with the Verifactu system. Yeah. So it's important to say then that the software has to be able to connect to internet, has to be able to receive messages from tax administration and send messages to the tax administration, and manage electronic signature to sign the invoices. Okay, who can send these invoices to the tax administration? It can be sent by the invoice issuer, so you as a company, the advisor with a power to do that as advisor, and also by your client, but just in the case that there is an auto invoice system. There is also the possibility that the recipient of the invoice can forward information to the tax administration through this QR code. Voluntarily, they can send the information that contains the QR code to the tax administration. So the tax administration receives the information from the issuer and from the recipient, and they can compare the information. Then also is provided in the royal decree that the tax administration can anytime appear to your premises and demand total access to the invoicing software to download, tramp, copy, and consult any invoice record. Yeah, I might say that invoice record and invoice is not the same. Invoice record is what is provided with the software, and invoice is the invoice as we know. Yeah, now in PDF and when it's electronic invoicing in this language system. And as I said, the tax administration will develop a public system that is thought for little companies and professionals, because they have already to decide, but the amount of invoices that can be issued with this public system will be from 100 to 1,000 a year. Okay. And just now we were reaching the end of our explanation, and we have wanted to put a summary table comparing the law Crea y Crece, so e-invoicing, with the law anti-fraud, that is the very FACT2 regulation. There are many points that we have already common. We have introduced here also the penalties in each case. But I must say that they are coming from different ministries, but it's the tax ministry who is collecting the data in both cases. So then there are different obligations, but we hope that they will converge in the future. And we hope also that the public platform design in both cases, that it will be the same platform. But this is something that by now is unknown, and that by now is said that everything will be different. So just for summarizing, the law Crea y Crece, e-invoicing, have to be complied together with SII. So the companies that they are submitting SII, they have to comply also with e-invoicing. And for companies not submitting SII, they will have to comply with very FACT2 law and e-invoicing. So they will work in parallel, and we will see in the future if they converge. Also, they have said that for the technical point of view, very FACT2 is the starting point for a more complete data model that will include more technical requirements and that will be the base of electronic invoicing. So it's important to comply with very FACT2, because in the end, it is the basis for electronic invoicing. And as said, and in the general tax law, the article 29.2 comments that all these requirements that I have said, integrity, mutability, have to be compliant not just for invoicing software, but also for accounting software and managing softwares. So it's important the reflection that if you are using a software that is not a global software, that is not complying with legislation, and for example, we have clients that they are working with local softwares. We may
Gemma, you're muted.
Sorry, I am mute. Okay, sorry, I was mute. I don't know if you have here my last point, that it was it was applying these mandatory requirements for invoicing, also for accounting software and managing softwares. Okay, and so as our last recommendation before questions and answers, we recommend you to talk with your software provider and to be sure that are going to meet the requirements. and that are going to issue the certificate to you that they are meeting all the requirements. If your software provider are not going to meet the requirements, then you for sure will need to change the software, to adapt the software. You can rely on us. We will support you in every doubt on everything. But first, it's important talk with your software provider. Okay, so now we are open to questions. So any question?
So just to be sure, Gemma was muted.
Yes, I think they missed just
1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, it was just the last point that I said that the invoicing requirements were the same as accounting requirements. So it will be necessary to review also for in the accounting point of view and not not only in the invoicing point of view. We have a raised hand. So now. Okay, Robert.
Thank you.
You can go ahead.
So thank you very much. I have a question, just trying to make sure I understand everything correctly. So we are currently generating invoices for our B2B clients in-house on our own. We basically just printing the PDF. These are credit notes to be more specific, but we just generating PDF, sending them, and everything is fine. As far as I understand, that won't be an option at some point, and we will need to either create the software that is compliant with the requirements, or we need to use the third party that is compliant and just create documents through these companies. So
yes, you are. Sorry, Robert. You are a company having supplying SII information, or you are a company with a turnover less, so you are not supplying SII? Because it is important to know if we are talking about requirements on electronic invoicing or in Verifactu.
I am not sure which one. I know we're less than 8 million in Spain, so if that matters. So I would like to understand what is the deadline, because this part was a bit confusing for me. So at which point we need to be already integrated with the provider that is compliant?
Okay. If you are a company that you are not supplying SII, that means a turnover less than 6 million euro, or that you are not voluntarily submitting SII, then Verifactu come in place in 1st of July 2025. So at this moment, you have to be compliant with software invoicing requirements. Okay. If you are a company that you are submitting SII, you will have to. You are not obliged with the Verifactu requirements, but it is thought that you are already complying, because with SII there are similar requirements, but you will be obliged to enter in the electronic invoicing. And electronic invoicing will be in place for companies less than 8 million in 2 years after the approval of the Royal Decree. We expect that the Royal Decree will be approved in June this year, but we cannot say sure, because we expected also last year that it was approved and it was not approved. So you can take more or less the date of June 2026 for your company on electronic invoicing. But as said, for Verifactu, for the invoicing requirements, if you are not submitting SII, you have to take in mind 1st of July 2025, so 1 year before.
Right. Let me rephrase. So I'm sure I might have good notes. So if we don't supply SII, can you maybe write it somewhere so I know how it's written or show me?
Chat.
If we don't do that, it's 1st of July 2025, and if we do that, it's 2 years, most likely from June 2024. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, but we were writing, so can you repeat, please?
Immediate supply.
Okay, so no SII. So how do I know if we do this SII or not? Is it related to
if your company has a turnover higher than 6 million euro, you are obliged to supply SII. Also, you can voluntarily supply SII. So there is a VAT monthly regime that to get in this regime, you have to supply SII. Okay, usually take in mind that if your company has a turnover higher than 6 million, you will be supplying SII for sure.
But this is only for Spanish market, right?
Yeah, just for Spain. Yeah, it's a tax requirement for Spain.
Right. So most likely we don't do that. And we have 1 year basically until July 2025.
Yes, until July 25. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Susan.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Regarding the 8 million, do we consider the revenues only of the Spanish entity or of the whole group, or maybe of a Spanish subgroup?
It is just the Spanish entity because they are the revenues for VAT purposes. So it's the Spanish revenues. In this case, they are not taking all the group revenues. So they will look at the Spanish entity.
Okay, and if we had more than one Spanish entities, which associated entities, it's the revenue of every single entity is relevant. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I have a second question.
Yes.
You don't make a difference between incoming revenues and outgoing incoming invoices and outgoing invoices.
No,
so the deadline will be the same to be able to get invoices, e-invoices, and to send them. Yes.
Yes, in the end, the volume is just treated for issue invoices. So they will look at your turnover or your revenue, and this will mark your deadlines. But once you are in, this is applicable to incoming and ongoing invoices. So in the private platforms or the public platforms, you will exchange the incoming and you will receive the incoming invoices from the platform, and you will issue the invoices and send to the platform.
Okay. Okay. It's just because we have in Germany different deadlines for being able or being obliged to receive e-invoices and being able to send them.
In Spain, is the same date.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Okay. So we have Mark.
Nico, I don't know.
Yeah. Hi. I have a question with regards to public companies or public entities in Spain. So, because in Germany, there's as Susan said, we have different deadlines, but on public companies or public entities, you have to comply with the e-invoicing completely earlier. How is it regulated in Spain?
In Spain, was already regulated in 2013. And since then, all the invoices issued to tax administration have to be electronic with the language facturae. So it's in place since then, and it will not change.
But even for companies outside of Spain, so.
Yes, even for that, and I think in most of cases, it could be that they ask also that you have a Spanish VAT number. So yes, for companies outside Spain, they are also obliged to use this Facturae. There is a public platform for Facturae, and companies outside Spain are using also this platform.
From where we can receive the data format for the different 4 accepted languages, because they are not quite international formats. So is there any public standards for the IT implementation of this kind of formats, or is it still in process?
It is still in process. I am sure that for Facturae it is published, and I guess it has to be in the tax administration website published, because there they publish all the technical requirements for everything. And also in Spain there are different platforms and suppliers that they are supporting and helping to issue this Facturae invoice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ramona.
Hi.
Hi.
I will just also for me, for my understanding. So when using invoicing, Verifactu will do what? Will be another check from the state, or will be implemented?
This is a good question. Until now, they say that they will work in parallel. So you have to comply with Verifactu and you have to comply with electronic invoicing. It is clear that when electronic invoicing is in force, you will need the QR code to comply with Verifactu. But I guess, if I'm not wrong, that the electronic signature will be no longer necessary, because you are exchanging already the invoicing in a private or public solution that contains the signature. But they will work in parallel, and if you are not submitting SII, you have to comply with electronic invoicing and with Verifactu.
But how this is working? Double way, double time?
Yes, double way, double
No.
time. But
So
remember
to
that
sending one invoice, to sending one to invoicing and one to Verifactu?
yeah, but remember that Verifactu is voluntarily, so you are not obliged to send to Verifactu.
No. Okay, so that means if we apply invoicing, that we are fine.
Yes, you are fine,
When?
but if you are not submitting SII, it means that you have to comply with all the other requirements in Verifactu. So invoice records have to fulfill the requirements. It has to contain the hash. It has to contain the QR code. It has to be electronically signed. So you have to comply with it. Yeah, that's mandatory.
It's mandatory at the end.
No,
it's
voluntary is just sending to the tax administration a copy, but the other requirements are mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it will be a nice period. We will support in everything we can, but until electronic invoicing and Verifactu or SII converge, we will have different obligations in Spain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question?
No,
Susan, yeah.
Yes, I have another question. Since you are doing our bookkeeping, so will you receive the e-invoice from all our creditors?
Yes.
Okay.
Our software provider is already working with the tax administration to be a private platform. So we will be able to receive this invoicing and to send to another private platform or public platform. Yes. In this case, we will supply you also with this service in the future.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Mark?
Yeah, sorry, one final one. The slides that you showed, do you will send them out or distribute them to us
Yeah.
who participated, or how do we get this kind of information if
Yes,
we need to distribute it in our organization?
Yes, we will send all the slides, and we will send the video, the session that has been recorded, because we think that the questions are also important and clarifying points. So we will send you both things.
Thank you.
James? You are mute, James.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, how would it work, for example, if our company doesn't need to invoice customers for 24 months, but some of our suppliers do because they're large suppliers, so after 12 months they want to send us an electronic invoice, but we are not yet registered because we're too small for the 12-month requirement, but we still have to register.
Okay, so when you mean when your supplier will be already obliged because he's a big company, more than 8 million euros turnover, and you are not obliged?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So in this time, it's an obligation. They will also have an obligation to include a PDF copy. So until everybody is obliged, before everybody is obliged, during this time, these who are obliged will have to send also PDF copy. So
Okay.
the ones that are not obliged can still work with PDFs.
Okay, so we would ask the supplier to send us a PDF, even if they have to submit for the tax a electronic copy. That
Yes.
doesn't, yeah, we don't necessarily need to be registered just to receive it. Okay.
Yes, but our advice is not to wait for the limit, so be registered in electronic invoicing as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? No, then many thanks. As we said when we send the invitation, this is a starting point. We are here to support you in any questions, doubts. Once the draft is approved and published, we will send you an update version of requirements to you, because we don't expect many changes, but it could be that something changed. And if it's necessary, we can do another webinar once is already approved. So we will know the deadlines, and we will know everything, and then we can work on implementing and supporting you on that.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Y ahora